Welcome back to another episode of the Black Menaces podcast. I am your host, Nate Bird. Actually, I just realized I forgot to test the audio, so let's do that really quick. Okay, let me test mine out. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, Ellie,
What's going on
with yours.
upstairs?
Testing.
Perfect, Rachel.
Hello.
Okay, cool. Now we're good. Now we'll start. Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you for attending. What am I?
It's all right.
Welcome back to another episode of the Black Menaces podcast. I'm your host, Nate Bird. We're super happy to be on the show here with you, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host,
Rachel Weaver. Happy to be here with you guys again this week.
Absolutely. And we have an incredible guest on the show who we are very excited to introduce to y'all today. Miss Ellie Coates, please say hello to the audience. Did I say your name right?
Yep, that's right. Hey, everybody.
Awesome. You want to just introduce yourself really briefly, like maybe 30 seconds, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your interview after the Menace moment.
Yeah, definitely. I'm Ellie Coates. I co-own an agency called Brand One Media. I'm the chief marketing officer there. And yeah, that's who I am.
And Brandon has talked very highly of you since I've known him. He's always been like, oh, you got to get Ellie on the podcast. So we're excited to finally have you here. For sure.
Brandon's great.
Yeah, he is. And we enjoyed the interview that we did with him. And it seemed like he enjoyed it too. So hopefully you do the same. But we'll jump into this Menace moment real quick. We're going to do one that's very fitting. I've actually been meaning to do this one for quite some time now, but kept pushing it back. Now that there's a movie out, I figure that it's fitting that we do a Menace moment on Bob Marley. So singer, songwriter, and guitarist Robert Nesta Marley was born February 6th, 1945 in 9 Mile, St. Ann Parish, Jamaica. His parents were Norval Sinclair Marley and Cedella Booker. Excuse me. Considered one of the pioneers of the genre, Marley fused elements of reggae, ska, and rock steady in his music and was renowned for his distinctive vocal and songwriting style. His contribution to music increased the visibility of Jamaican music worldwide and made him a global figure in popular culture. Over the course of his career, Marley became known as a Rastafarian icon, and he infused his music with a sense of spirituality. He is also considered a global symbol of Jamaican music and culture and identity, and was controversial in his outspoken support for democratic social reforms. He began his career as part of the band The Wailers in 1963. They were originally called The Teenagers and then changed their name to The Wailers. Their debut single, One Love, was a huge hit and solidified the rise of their career. The Wailers went on to release 11 studio albums, which is a lot of albums, and eventually changed their name to Bob Marley and the Wailers after they signed to Island Records. When they disbanded in 1972, after about a 9-year run, Marley continued to use the name, releasing hits like I Shot the Sheriff and No Woman, No Cry, which was his first global breakthrough song. In following albums, Bob Marley continued to combine styles of music like reggae, blues, soul, and British rock, increasing his appeal and popularity throughout the world. He was greatly inspired by the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie and was a longtime member of the Rastafarian movement. I don't know a ton about Rastafarianism. Actually, I don't know really anything about it. I don't know. Rachel, do you know anything about it?
I do know that it was like a religious thing, a spiritual thing. But that's about all I know. And I know that a lot of people who are part of that community, they all have really long locks. That's what I know. Yeah. I don't know the meaning behind that though, but that's what I do know.
Yeah, that's about the same thing that I know.
Yeah.
So, but he was a huge advocate for Rastafarianism during his lifetime. And yeah, my only experience with Rastafarianism in real life was this random white guy that I knew in college. He was a super cool guy, real chill. But he decided that he no longer wanted to be a part of the Mormon church and he wanted to be a Rasta.
Oh, wow.
And so he started speaking with a Jamaican accent.
Oh.
And so that was how I communicated with him. And
I'm going to be honest. I didn't know they had different ethnicities in Rastafarianism. Well, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Okay.
But he felt like, he felt like he was most comfortable speaking in a Jamaican accent. He was from Oregon. Super nice guy. But I just thought that was interesting. So that was my only experience with Rastafarianism.
Did he get locks?
Not during the time that I knew him.
Okay.
And I ran into him maybe like 3-4 years ago. He blocked me on Facebook, but he didn't have locks then either.
Nate gets blocked by a lot of people.
I do get blocked by a lot of people. Oh man. Okay. Let's see here. A little bit more about him. So he's greatly inspired by Haile Selassie. I mean, in Rastafari culture, I don't want to say too much on it because I don't know a lot, but I know that they believe that the Emperor Haile Selassie, who was Emperor of Ethiopia, they believe that he was like a reincarnation of Jah or Yahweh, like God, and so he holds a significant like status within that religion or that movement. And then later on in his life, in 1977, Bob Marley was diagnosed with melanoma and later died as a result of that in 1981. And his greatest hit album was released in 1984 and became the best-selling reggae album in history. He also ranks as one of the best-selling music artists of all time, with an estimated 75 million records sold worldwide.
Oh, wow.
He was posthumously honored by Jamaica soon after his death with a designated Order of Merit by his nation. In 1994, he was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Rolling Stone ranked him number 11 on its list of the 100 greatest artists of all time, and number 98 on its list of the 200 greatest singers of all time. His other achievements include a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and an induction into the Black Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame. And he is survived by several children.
So many kids.
So many kids. Let's see here.
His legacy is crazy.
11 that are known for sure. And then there may be others. And then he was also survived by his wife, whose name was, or who went by Rita, but her name was Alpharita Constantia Anderson. She went by Rita. And then he had 11 children: Sharon, Cedella, David, also known as Ziggy Marley, Stephen, Robbie, Rohan, Karen, Stephanie, Julian, Kimani, and Damien. Got them all in there. But that is Mr. Robert Nesta Marley, also known as Bob Marley. All right. Cool. And with that, we were going to talk about the One Love movie. I wanted to get your opinion on what you thought of the movie, because we talked a little bit about it.
Yeah.
But
thought it was good. Like you were saying though earlier, before we started recording, they could have given more of a background kind of on his life, so that when we jumped into the movie, we didn't just feel like we're kind of brought into a story that we weren't really set up for. And they did a couple flashbacks, but not enough to give context on why he wanted to pursue music, just because that would have been interesting, he's so famous, what led him to this point, and then also more on him being a Rasta and like what that is, because it's not really talked about in mainstream media. I think that would have been a good opportunity, because I think a lot of his children and family like all still identify with as Rastas, and so I think that would have been something cool. And knowing that the family had such a big hand in the movie, I'm kind of like, oh, well, why didn't they want more of that to be told? Maybe it's sacred to them. I don't know. But I know that his family played a very large role in what was shared in the film, what his story was. They're very, very particular.
That's true. That's a good point. And I guess, if the family was very involved, maybe they didn't want to talk much about the religion.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could be it, man. It's a possibility. But Ellie, what were your thoughts on the movie? Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
So, Stephen King talks about like his books being turned into movies and explains it as a Cadillac without an engine. And that's a little bit how I felt about the movie, is that it could have been so incredible, but there was so much that was missing that made you kind of disconnect from him a little bit.
Okay.
And so I think going more into the backstory of his life, or like you said, his love for music and why he got into it would have been a little bit better. But I think it was good. It just wasn't incredible.
Right.
I agree. Yeah, I think same for me. And I was saying earlier too that, when I left the theater after watching Bohemian Rhapsody, I feel like I knew a lot about Freddie Mercury. Or like when I finished watching Rocket Man, a lot of songs and a horrible amount of sequin glasses later, I knew a lot about Elton John as well. And I really like his music. I just didn't like that movie. But like, I feel like this movie I wish that they had taken the time to like tell more of Bob Marley's story. But yeah, I thought we'd highlight him a little bit on the podcast.
I thought the woman who played his wife did incredible.
Okay.
That's why I say I thought she was the best in the movie.
What is
I don't know her name.
No.
But she was in Woman King. I think I talked about it before.
Lashana Lynch.
Okay.
That's what it is.
She did great. I thought she did phenomenal. Yeah. Like, I thought she was a great actor. I thought she like did a better job than the guy who played Bob Marley in certain ways. Because I thought she just really like captured more. And like after I did more research and like every man in history, just terrible. I'm sorry.
I know
They
Rita was.
contributed in some way, and I'm glad for that. But like so many men in history, they're just terrible cheaters and just lots of babies out of wedlock. So I was rooting for her for that, and I thought she did her role very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
For sure. Well, without further ado, Ellie, we're gonna jump into this interview.
Yes.
We're excited to hear about this story and whatever you want to share with us. So let's talk a bit about, let's start with, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'll make a big journey out of Idaho and came to Utah, which is basically Idaho 2.0. So I didn't go very far, but that's where I grew up most of my life.
Okay. So you came from Sun Valley, Idaho?
Yeah. Quick question. What's like the nearest place near that? Because that's like, sounds like a smaller town.
It is.
And I know Idaho decently. Okay. So I'm like, okay, what's the next closest place that I might know?
Twin Falls or Boise.
Okay, yes.
They're near there, but not quite.
Okay, but how far are they?
Twin Falls is an hour away and Boise's 2 hours away.
Oh, okay. So you more north? South?
North?
Sorry, I'm geography person. So I'm like, which direction are you from?
I'm geographically illiterate, basically.
All right. That's all right.
Southern Idaho.
Southern Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of like before you would get over to, you know how when you go to Idaho, you can go like the Pocatello that way. So you'd go like towards Boise, but stop before you get up there.
Yep, you would.
Okay, see? I got
Glad
you.
we figured that out.
I got you.
There we go. Cool. So you grew up there. What was it like as a child growing up in Sun Valley? Just what was your experience like there, and what made you want to leave and move to the wide world of Utah?
So Sun Valley is kind of a unique place. There is an extreme amount of wealth that is in a little tiny valley. Lots of celebrities have second homes there and frequent often.
Wow.
So it comes with the beauty of opportunity. I think the level of education there is much higher than other parts of Idaho and maybe even the country. But there's also a really dark side to it. There's lots of expectations that are really hard to meet from parents, coworkers, friends, peers. It's like this unspoken thing that you have to be perfect. And so I think that has a really hard effect on kids that grow up there. There's really high suicide rates. And so it was good to kind of get out of there and explore and venture on my own after a bit.
Okay. What do you think it was that contributed to like that idea of like needing to be perfect? Or
I think when you get in high concentrations of wealth like that, it's kind of an expectation that you have to be this perfect image. And if you're not, it's really shameful for you and for your family. And so I think that's why you see a lot of that happen there.
Okay.
Question, were there a lot of like, was it a homogenous and like racially and in terms of like people being like members of the LDS church? I'm just curious because I know that religious expectation, this church or not, any church, it can create that, I feel like that, I don't know, like a container even more of that level of perfectionism when you add in just like any religion and like a level of like, I guess like non-sinning that you need to like be at almost. So I'm curious if you think that played a role in it at all, if that was present.
There really isn't a strong there isn't a really strong religious pull in the valley, which is kind of interesting. But I would say racially, it's not very diverse at all. There's very few people that have darker skin or are not white. So there's not a lot of diversity there.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah. Interesting.
Makes sense. And so like, did you spend like literally like childhood to adulthood, like you born and raised same exact place?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up most of the time in Sun Valley. And then when I turned 15, I left home and dropped out of high school.
Oh, wow.
And then I lived there for a few more years and then moved to Twin Falls, which isn't that far away from Sun Valley, and then moved to Utah a little bit after that.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what was it that that made you drop out of high school and live in the valley? Were you just working there, or like what opportunities present themselves?
Kind of. I got really lucky and met this incredible woman along my journey of life, and she really gave me opportunities that I should have never seen really at that age. And she really believed in me and took a chance on me and taught me everything that I know about business. And that's really where I got started.
Wow.
But I had such a horrible home life that I was like, I got to get out of here. I have to do something different. And so I was like, well, I'll just go out on my own and hope for the best. And it was really, really hard. But a lot of really good people got put in my path. And so they helped me get through all of it.
That's amazing. It really is. And like at such a young age, that can be very difficult because like you're kind of thrust into like adulthood and responsibilities that really no one at that age is prepared to handle, but you kind of have to learn how to handle them. So like what was that like, kind of like juggling the everyday struggles of being a teenager, but then also having to like juggle the everyday struggles of being an adult at the same time?
Yeah.
And like, you know, what was that kind of like? And like, how would you say that changed you or affected you or helped you moving forward?
I already was, I guess, emotionally an adult by that time. Just being on my own so much at home, I kind of learned how to navigate the world, but I worked 3 jobs and just tried to make ends meet as best that I could. And it was difficult because when you're that young, nobody's really going to take you seriously.
Right.
But for some reason, she did. She took me really seriously, the woman that let me work for her and learn everything. And so I was able to push through it that way. But generally, it was just kind of, you're too young to understand life. But I understood life far more than I think people realized.
Okay.
And this woman who kind of took you under her wing, almost, it sounds like, what did she allow you to do? What was that experience like? Because I'm just curious, like it sounds like that opportunity really helped you to mature and develop and feel ready to be able to make a move. Like, because even at like 18, moving across state lines is a big deal, right? Like I remember moving to college, my whole family came out with me, helped me bring my luggage. Like it's a big deal even at 18. So I don't know what age you were when you finally moved from Twin Falls, but still, like what was that experience like in that relationship like that helped build you up to that point to make you feel ready to do something like that?
She really showed me, first of all, what a real family actually looks like. She showed me what it's like to have a real interaction between a parent and a child that I had never seen before, and that kind of dynamic. And so that was really cool. But she also taught me some really nice core values, like honesty no matter what, and kindness, and really trying to see the best in people. And then she allowed me to basically run her business by the time I was 16 or 17 years old. So I got to learn leadership from her and finances, marketing, and how everything runs. And that was a really cool opportunity.
That is amazing.
At that age too.
Right, absolutely. So what was it that kind of drove you to Utah? You know, like coming out of Idaho, what made you decide to move down here?
Well, I had kids along the way. My first kid I had at 16, so that put in another additional stress on having to grow up really fast and make it in the world. And so I saw lots of opportunity in Utah and wanted to venture out here to try to continue to make a better life for myself and my children.
Okay. What did you get into out here?
I worked in Idaho. There's a really small essential oil company that I worked at for a while, and then I moved out here and started working at another one, and eventually went to work at Young Living and run all their advertising and stuff like that. So that's really where I got my start here.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say that, and I don't know when you came, but at least my impression of Utah when I came here in 2017 was that it's a place where people who really can, like, you can find opportunities. I don't know how, like, some people, I'm like, what are people doing here? Like, what are people's jobs here sometimes? Because, you know what I mean? Like, people really just find a way here. And so I feel like out of all places to move and like find a way because there's so many people who like didn't go to college, don't have these hard, skill experiences that people expect you to have, but are really able to like make a successful life for themselves. I feel like Utah has a large concentration of people who fall into that bucket. And so I love that you were able to come here and find that here, because I don't necessarily know if that's always the case in every city, every state. People, they judge a little harder, I feel like, and really aren't as open to giving people those opportunities who don't meet this like criteria that they believe you should fit.
Yeah, I think so too. I think part of the good aspects of the church on the influence that the church has in Utah is that people are a lot more welcoming and trusting. And so some of the people that I've met along my career journey and became really close friends with have opened so many doors. And I think everyone's so interconnected too that you're able to get more opportunities that you wouldn't see other places.
I agree with that.
Interesting. So when you moved to Utah, and you're seeing all these opportunities and things like that here, and then you're coming from Sun Valley, what were some of like the biggest differences that you noticed? And like, what was it like adjusting to Utah? Because you mentioned that like it wasn't super religious where you grew up, even though you were in Idaho, which Utah and Idaho, religiously tend to coincide. So what was it like? Kind of like, did you feel like you had to make a lot of adjustments moving from Idaho to Utah? And what was that like?
It was a huge adjustment. I didn't understand what a soda shop was. That was real weird.
Yeah. Not before I got here. I never heard of that.
Just so bizarre.
I'm laughing because I'm like, that's so real. But it's funny now living here, like, oh yeah, that's a thing.
It doesn't exist anywhere else. Yeah.
It's bizarre. I think the hardest thing for me too was learning the little cultural differences, because the church does play such a big part in Utah and the culture, whether you're LDS or not. That was a little interesting for me to learn kind of the terms and different things that people believed. It was very weird for me at first.
And what was it like coming here? You said you already had a child at this point, and so coming here, do you feel like you said the people were welcoming, but do you feel like at first that hindered your experience or changed the way people perceived you? Just because although people are welcoming and understanding here, there is a level of like homogeny in Utah, and people kind of like, when you don't fall into kind of this box that they expect people to, whatever that is, racially, family, makeup, economic status, whatever. Sometimes people don't know how to interact with you or treat you weird because they've never had to interact with someone who didn't fall into, you've met these like 3 categories, right, that they're used to. And so did you experience anything like that when you met people and began to work and develop relationships here?
I think because of how I had learned to interact as a teen who was out on their own in the world, I was really good at kind of blending in when I needed to. So I didn't really out myself. Like I was a teen mom and dropped out of high school. I just would try to blend in as best I could. Where I really saw that kind of division happen was I converted to be LDS for a little bit, and I remember my first Relief Society event that I went to, they had asked, like, what does your husband do? And I was like, oh, he does, X, Y, and Z, but I work too. And they looked at me like I had 10 heads. And they were like, you what?
Interesting.
And I remember the rest of the night, they completely ignored me and wouldn't talk to me.
Really?
And
Really?
it was really weird because in Idaho, there's a lot of women in the workforce and it's very common. And so it kind of took me aback a little bit. That's probably the first time that I had really experienced something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't say I've ever heard of anything like that necessarily happening before. I mean, I have heard like there's, interesting opinions about working and things like that, but I thought that those were like people had those less nowadays than you would think. But yeah, that is striking and kind of frustrating because, you go to that expecting to feel welcomed. And then just because you happen to have a job, people look at you or treat you differently. That's interesting. Yeah. And so you mentioned that you like converted for a little bit. What led to like you wanting to be a part of the LDS church and then like changing your mind about that down the line?
I wanted to, because you see a lot of people who are in religions, they have this connection with each other and with their community. They have this sense of belonging and it seems like they are happier in their lives. And so I was like, well, it would only make sense. I mean, most of the state is LDS. And so maybe that's something that's been missing from my life that I just didn't realize. And so I tried that out. But I think because of all the gray areas in my life that weren't the straight and narrow path, it was really hard for me to do that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Welcome. Yeah, no, totally. I feel like that's a lot of people's experiences is feeling like those gray areas in their life make it difficult to feel like that belonging piece that some people are looking for. And we could do a whole other episode about like community and organized religion and all of that. And I feel like that's a natural human desire, right? Is to feel connected, and seeing people a part of a group. You're like, well, I want to check out what this group is about because everyone is connected to each other, and really that's just what, community building is about. And we're slowly losing that day after day in America, but it's definitely a need for humans to want and feel that community. It's unfortunate that it's wrapped up in some other toxic issues.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. And mentioning kind of the different issues that tend to be in Utah, and then within the church as well, and people struggling to hoping to find belonging and find identity, and maybe struggling to find that in the ways that they thought that they would. We understand that you have kind of like an interesting relationship with your identity, especially like your racial identity. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and just kind of like jump into that, because it's a pretty interesting story? You say the best part for last.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm actually adopted, and my parents are white. And so the story my whole life had been you're part Inuit, part Asian, and part Mexican. And so I was like, great, that's wonderful. I still had no connection to those communities because I grew up with a white family in a town that is mostly white as well. But when I was going to have my first daughter, I met my real mom. And so that was an interesting interaction. And she confirmed, yeah, you're Inuit, you're Asian, and you're Mexican. And so I had learned a ton about Mexican culture by then and learned Spanish and was really excited about it. And then I took a 21andMe.
23andMe?
Yeah, 23andMe test. And I got those results back. And I was like, this is a mistake. What is this? It said half Black and then half Inuit and half Asian. And at first I was like, they made a mistake. This is not my test.
And no Mexican?
Zero.
Not me doing this with my fingers while you're telling me that. You're going through the, I'm saying, wait a minute. I'm like,
right. I was trying to count. I was like,
literally, I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm trying to add this up to 100%. I'm like,
that was me too. I was like, 1, 2, 3. Where's the other one?
Yeah. Like once you add the halves together, there's nothing left after
that.
Yeah. So I was like, it's a lie. It's not right. This test isn't right. And then I was like, who is Inuit and Asian? It's right. It has to be. And so I realized, no, it's right. So I went through this.
And how old were you at this point?
Right.
Oh gosh, I was like 25, I want to say.
Okay, wow.
So an adult, but
yeah,
I remember it shook me to my core. And I was like, everything I knew about myself was a lie. I didn't really actually know who I was. And so I had to kind of go through this period of like, what is my culture and where do I come from? And obviously here there's not as big of a concentration of African Americans. So it was like, who do I connect to be able to learn my culture and where I come from and what my people are like. And so that was interesting for sure.
Question in that process, have you had a chance to talk with your birth mother at all since then? Because I know you met her briefly, but have you had any contact with her to kind of be like, so I have a question. You know what I mean? Like, we kind of need some answers, Did you get a chance to do that or not at all?
I did. So I remember messaging her and being like, so we got a little problem here, don't we? And at first she really was resistant to talk about it. But she did, but still didn't give me enough information to learn who my real father is. And so I don't know if I'll ever set out on that journey or not to figure out who is he and where does he come from? What does he do? He's obviously the Black portion of who I am. So it'd be interesting, but that kind of was the end of our relationship, which is a bummer, but it happens. And so I've just had to move forward. But looking back now, my hair has always been extremely curly and there really wasn't an answer for that. So it's kind of like, duh, it makes a lot of sense now, but then it just, I don't know, it was just kind of there.
Yeah. I empathize with you because my mother, she also doesn't know she took a DNA test. She went her whole life. It was 2017 when we found out like what her real ethnicity was, because she only knew who her birth mother was, and like that relationship is very don't speak about that I'm your mother. So like couldn't even ask. So we literally had to take a test to find out, and we found out she was half black, half white. And still to this day, we have no idea who that man is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we don't know. And so I totally like empathize. I mean, not fully because it's not my experience, but having that in my family, I'm like, it just feels like kind of a hole that you kind of just need to fill yourself and just like get comfortable with. And it is a hard journey. I think one day I'm like, I'm going to buy a PI for my mom. That's like my goal. It's like one day I'm going to get a PI. I'm going to have them figure out who he is, and not even necessarily to give her answers on who he is, but just so that she could know for herself. Like not that she would meet him. Yeah. Like I don't think she'd meet him. He could be dead. Who knows? You know, my mom's 62 now, but just so that she could see herself and even know like this is who they are. If you want to do something with it, you could. If you wanted to, if you just want to have peace in knowing it, you can have that as well. So
yeah, I've considered that too. I mean, when I did the test, I matched with a lot of second and third cousins, and I interacted with a few of them. And so, I mean, from that aspect of things, I could get to know my culture and where I come from, but still, it's not quite close enough to make a connection.
That is true. Yeah. And it's, that's a traumatic thing to go through at any age, right?
Oh, yeah.
Finding out that like a whole part of your identity has just been kind of missing from you that whole time, where like you didn't know that it was there. What was it like? I don't know. Do you feel like you're still coming to terms with that? Do you feel like it's something that you've come to terms with and like you've moved past, or like how has that affected your life after that point?
I think it was just really trying to learn what part of me is that, what part of the culture shows up in me that I didn't even realize. And it was actually really recently that I realized what it was. I went to New Orleans and heard real jazz and got to interact with the most African-American people I've ever seen in my entire life. And I felt at home. I felt this sense of like, this is where you belong. This is where you're supposed to be. And I felt the music deep in my soul that I've never felt before. And so I realized like so much of myself comes from this, and I didn't even know that. And even being raised basically white, it was really weird to connect like that. And then realize even though I had been in a different culture, I was meant to be here. So that was really interesting. And I've tried to just learn more as I can.
That's something special for sure. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, like so much of African-American culture just stems from the South. And I feel that way too. I don't know if you feel that way, Nate, when you're in the South. Like, I feel that like that's how I feel in any part of the South, whether I'm in Georgia, Alabama.
You just feel a connection to the land.
Yeah, like that's how it feels. Like for me, like it just feels, I don't know, it feels comfortable. And I'm not from the South. So it's not like that's where I grew up or anything. But it is this sense of like, yeah, because even Black people like me, like I know who my grandparents are and whatnot, but there's always a stop to Black history, unfortunately, in so many families. And so even then, like we don't know as much as we want to know even. And but it's like I don't even need to know that to still feel connected to these people and their stories and like who they are. And so I think that's a cool thing. And I don't know if people from other ethnic or racial groups can relate to that feeling or whatever, but it's definitely something that I feel. So I totally understand and recognize that feeling that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
In the test, it was able to trace where most of my family was from on my dad's side, and it was Kentucky, and a lot of them way down the line were slaves over in the South. So it was kind of interesting that I felt that connection there without ever growing up there.
That's true. Yeah. And I think what was I going to say? It was something profound. Oh yeah, I was going to ask you a question. And I think I love you telling that story about your experience in New Orleans, hearing that jazz, and feeling that connection. I think that that's something really special, and I think that that's something that maybe a lot of people with like mixed racial identities or like multiple racial identities maybe don't necessarily have that luxury a lot of times. Like they might go into a space where like that's a part of their culture, but because maybe they were disconnected from that. Like we've talked with people who are immigrants and they talk about how like even though they were born in another country, they've lived in the United States for so long that going back to that country, they're treated differently. Like they're treated like an outsider, like a foreigner. So, what would you say to someone who has like multiple racial identities and is maybe trying to connect with a portion of themselves or their identity? What would you say to them if they go into a space where they're trying to feel that connection and maybe they don't feel that connection right away?
I would
What
say
advice would you give?
that it doesn't have to be one specific race that you connect with. If you're more than one, I would try to learn everything you can about all of the races that you're a part of and their culture, and interact with those people if you can, and then see what really speaks to your heart and your soul, because maybe it's one, maybe it's a few of them. But just getting to know those people and those kind of stories and cultures and seeing what really resonates with you.
I love that.
And as you you figured this out, you slowly you're learning more, having these experiences. What has that been like for your relationship with the people around you? Because I think that that's always an interesting piece, right? It's not just you recognizing it and feeling it for yourself, but now it's kind of like, oh, you're also like, you're changing, and people, they kind of have to accept it around you, or now you have to teach your children, right, a new part of their identity. And so I'm curious, what was it like, to talk to your adoptive family about, like, this is actually what I identify as, and like your friends in your life, how was it, coming to this new part of yourself, and obviously your children as well. So, yeah.
I think it's been a mix of confusion. Like, what do you mean this is what you like now? I think it's been that. I've also gotten the, like, hey, I'm half Black and I'm really excited about it. And some people are like, oh, I mean, Black people make me feel uncomfortable, but you're different. So you're different. That's okay. That to me was very bizarre.
That's
or like,
outrageous.
it's okay that you're Black. And I was like, yeah, it is okay.
Right. You're like, I didn't think it wasn't okay.
Thanks for that one.
Not the compliment. It's okay.
It's
okay.
wild to fix your lips and tell somebody it's okay to be
And you should be jumping for excitement. Like, woo, you found a new part of yourself. I don't know. That's how I would react if someone came to me and told me they discovered a new piece of themselves. So that's really interesting that people said that was their reaction. Wow.
I did get a lot, though, that were really excited for me. This is a new journey for you, and we're here for you along the way. We'll be there if you want to try to hire a PI and meet your real dad. But it was kind of a mixed bag of different reactions.
Interesting.
Oh, I was going to say, and have you talked to your, I don't know if I know you have one child, but I don't know if you have more children. Have you talked with them about it? Or are you like kind of waiting for that piece? Because I know that's complex as well, right? Is like explaining, multi-ethnic, multiracial identity when you're still figuring out for yourself. And then, your children, if they're also mixed race now, that's like another layer of explanation, right? And so I'm curious if you've taken that journey, what that's been like, and if you are later, what are you thinking about for your plan to do that?
Well, I have 3 kids of my own and 2 stepkids. So I have 5 total.
Yeah, I love it.
So I have no shortage of kids.
Right.
But they've been really excited. I think what's interesting, though, is that the majority of my children are blonde with white skin, but there's still a big majority of them is Black. So teaching them the culture and how we talk about different things. And I talk about a lot of racial problems that go on in the world and make them very aware of that and teach them to be allies for people, even if they don't appear to be Black, but they are. So that's been really interesting.
No, and I love that, because I think that's something that I've seen with my friends who, they're mixed themselves, and then they don't have a child with like a Black person. And so then their child is even more mixed with whatever the combination is. And I know that that's sometimes something difficult for people to navigate and to figure out how do they have conversations about racial things. And it's like, you're not always going to appear this way to everybody. And so I love that you teach them about being an ally, because I feel like that's a really important piece to still like own, like that's who you are and that's in your DNA. Those are your people. But also like there's an aspect of like race is how you appear and how people, look at you. And unfortunately, people are going to perceive one thing when they see you.
Definitely.
What were some of what have been some of like the main thoughts, like good thoughts and I guess negative thoughts as well, as you've been trying to, like work on building up your identity and like understanding more about it? What would you say are some of like the good things that you think about it, like the good things that occur in your head, and then some of the negative things? I
think some of the negative things for me is feeling like I don't really belong with Black people because I don't understand the culture as much as I would have if I was growing up in that or was directly close to family members. And so, I mean, even though my skin is obviously darker than somebody who's white, it still has been kind of like, am I okay here? So that's probably the negative parts, but the positive parts have been just that instant connection that I felt and the excitement and joy to be able to learn about this part of myself.
Absolutely. And I love the instant joy, instant connection.
Because that's so true. I was just gonna say that's so true with Black people. I can't speak for other races, but I mean, as soon as we see it, we find out like even if we can't see you're Black, but we find out you're Black, it's like an immediate like it's literally like a relief. Like it's like this like instant, and I love that. I don't know. That's one of my favorite things. Is like when you find out, even like you don't even need to appear. Once I know that we're the same in that way, it's like this instant like understanding of like who we are and our experiences. And so I love that you get to experience that now and be a part of that. And I feel like Utah, my experience so far in meeting people, I feel like there are a lot of multiracial people here or people who, kind of go on their racial journey later in life. And I feel like Utah is honestly a good place for that because there are people with similar journeys. And the Black community is so tight knit here that it allows you kind of to experience that in an authentic way. And so what has been your experience like as you have, come to know more and have maybe tried to like reach out to the Black community here in Utah and participate in things? What has that experience been like for you? Has it been scary? Because, that piece you said, that negative thought of like not feeling like you belong. And if you have reached out, has it, been different than what your expectations were?
It's been nothing but positive.
That's good.
My really good friend, Brandon, I remember there was a Black Chamber event and I was like, I don't know if I can go because I don't know if I know the culture well enough. And I feel like I would just not belong. And he said, no, your story's important. You getting to know people who are like you is important and you're going to be welcomed. And so he really helped me to be like, okay, it's going to be okay. It'll be fine. But it's been nothing but positive from what I've experienced here.
That's good. And that's amazing. And that's really the way that it should be. But we also know that it's not necessarily like that all the time. Like all of us, I would say, have probably experienced feelings where like maybe we felt excluded by the community or felt a part of, like being rejected or that feeling of loneliness, right? And so that can be common for a lot of people. And it can especially be common among people who have multiracial identities because because of like colorism within the Black community, people, making inferences based on the darkness of your skin color and all of these different things, and how well this TV show compared to that TV show and this, Twitter hashtag compared to that one.
Yeah.
So there can be like this feeling that you kind of have to like study for a test almost.
Yep.
To like, get your Black card, right? So,
yep. That's how I
have you felt that way?
A little bit.
Okay.
Well, I think it's just self-perceived though, but yes, I felt that way.
I get that. When I first came to BYU, like growing up in a very LDS household and like growing up homeschooled, I was very sheltered myself. And so I kind of felt that feeling as well. Like, oh, I have to like play catch up and like understand what it means to be a Black person. But like, that's different for everybody. And it looks different depending on where you come from, depending on who you are. Like your experience is different, right? So like, yes, I love Drake. I love Kendrick Lamar, but I'm also going to go read Christopher Paolini, right? Because I'm a huge nerd. I enjoy Aragon, right? So like, you can kind of like have these multiple experiences and not have it be a monolith. So I love that, that your experience has been positive thus far.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. And what I've appreciated about Utah in particular is being able to meet people who are, how I think I've shared this on podcasts before, just like expanded my understanding of what Blackness was, because I grew up, south side of Chicago, pretty narrow, idea of what Blackness was to me. Like, I only knew like African Americans. I didn't even really know people from other parts of the diaspora, like from other, countries and whatnot. And so I really have appreciated my time in Utah because I've met people from different countries, different ethnicities, and also meeting people, who, might have been raised by non-Black people and they're coming to understand their identity. And so I love being able to meet people like that because it helps me, again, just reinforces even within our own stereotypes that we have about ourselves, that we are not a monolith, right? That we have different identities. And it's helped me to not be that Black person that makes you feel like you have to have a test. You know what I mean? Because I think it's even our own, like, we perpetuate our own narratives within our own community sometimes. And so I'm glad that I've had this experience, because I know there's some Black people I can think of right now back home that they need to learn that themselves, to not make other Black people feel like you have to show up and your Blackness needs to look a certain way. And really just accepting, like, you're Black, period, no matter what you choose to wear, listen to, talk like. And I love that definition of Blackness is growing and changing as we become more diverse in the United States.
I actually, I have a friend who had like a similar experience where she grew up in an adoptive family, and I think she was like 24 or 25 before her family told her that she was biracial. Right, so she had like a similar experience growing up, not really like realizing that difference. And so, we've talked about that a little bit, but I thought that was interesting. I just remembered that. But I wanted to ask too, like, in trying to connect with your Black identity, because that was a part of you that you weren't necessarily aware of, or like that hadn't been shared with you. But you also mentioned that like you have other identities as well. So like your Asian identity and your Inuit identity. What has it been like connecting with those? Have you found that it's been a similar experience or a completely different experience?
I don't think I've connected enough with the Asian part of me. So I think it'd be interesting to go over to China and actually learn a little bit and be immersed in the culture and see if I would feel that kind of a connection that I did with the Black side of me. And then with the Inuit culture, I'd love to go to Alaska. I'm from a tribe that still lives there, and they still practice a lot of the culture. So that would be really interesting to learn about. But through actually TikTok, I've been able to watch other Inuits who are like very native to Alaska, and they've always followed the culture, and they talk about it. And it's really cool to learn about that. So I feel a connection there. I just have more to learn.
That's amazing. I feel like TikTok is like the new Discovery Channel. I feel like every time I turn around, somebody's always like, "Oh yeah, I saw this on TikTok." I saw that. It'll be like the craziest thing, but it's always something amazing.
Yeah,
you can learn so much.
And getting exposed to people that you just maybe don't have access to here, right? Like, I think the West overall has more like indigenous Native people than in comparison to like the East and like the Midwest, but still Alaska's far. And so there may not be anybody who is, from that community here. And so it's a great that you have a source directly, right, from people in that space in, a short, digestible way, which is why Congress, y'all cannot ban TikTok because it brings so much good. I know you're probably not listening to the Black Minutes podcast, but still, we need to do all we can to make sure that doesn't happen, because that's how y'all learned about us, is through TikTok. And so many people learn about so many important things. And that's my soapbox moment for the episode. Sorry.
No, I love that. That's very important. Yeah, you're right. You bring up a good point, because like with Instagram and with Facebook, it's very local, right? Like you have your circle, the algorithm figures out what you like, and then it just shows you that. But with TikTok can show you something different every single time. Like, you can follow different things, and like the algorithm is going to pick up things here and there, but every once in a while it's going to like throw in a cat playing with the ball of yarn, or an Inuit person doing something, in the wild, or like someone, doing a survival this, or like, there's always going to be something interesting to pique your interest. And so, I think that's important. It opens people's worlds and like, gives them a chance to explore.
Like, I don't know about you guys, but I go on TikTok to not look at my friends. Like, it's cute if my friends do a little video, I'm gonna like it. Okay, whatever. But I go on TikTok to listen to other people. And like here, like I go to consume. I don't go to like engage it with friends and stuff. Like that's what I have Facebook for, Instagram for. And so TikTok to me is its own platform in that way. Like if I want to learn, like even about Black people, like stuff that I don't know, I've learned so much about Black people, other races, other issues, that I just would have been, I guess oblivious to if it wasn't for TikTok.
And we've been a vessel of the same thing. With, like, using TikTok to spread that knowledge to other people.
Yeah.
With our videos, things like that. So
I agree.
Cool. Well, I don't know. You got anything else?
Yeah, I do actually. Okay, I wanted to ask just about kind of your journey and what you do, because I love to highlight like people's career.
That's right. We haven't talked about
that's
that.
All right. Anyway, I just wanted to ask like what like your experience kind of leading, because you said you're the head marketing person of this
Brand One Media?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chief Marketing Officer?
Okay. And so I wanted to ask about your experience kind of being a woman of color, being a leader in this company. And yeah, take it how you want. And you can talk about any experiences that led you to that point, especially working in a place like Utah where women aren't always viewed as leaders, aren't always viewed as people to take initiative. And then also, like, again, being a woman of color, being a Black woman in that space is very different. And so just sharing like your experience, what that's been like. And then I'll ask you for some advice that you'd give people coming up in that same position.
Well, I think where I'm at now, I couldn't have been luckier. I mean, Brandon's a part of it and he is Black, and there's a lot of actually Black leadership in our company. And so it's very welcoming and you feel really empowered. And I think it's a unique place because the majority of us are minorities.
And so Utah, that is unique. You're working with a bunch of minorities. Yes. Yeah. Special.
It's really special. But I mean, along the way, because I'm a lot younger than most people who have this kind of role or who own companies, and I'm female, I have faced a lot of stuff along the way. Like I remember a meeting I had with a client. They were going to introduce me to this client, my team was, and they were like, "This is Ellie. She's in charge here." And the client laughed and was like, "Ha ha ha, I can't tell if you're joking." And I just kind of like turned my head to the side a little bit and smiled and was like, "Nope, they're not joking."
Unacceptable. That's wild.
What did the client say?
He was just, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
right."
So I faced a lot of that.
Right.
It's a lot of like being a female in leadership is a lot of people assuming that you are not intelligent or that you're not the leader or that you don't have really any experience or really business being there. But I've learned along the way to just smile and be like, "Yep, I'm meant to be here. You can't take that away from me." And that's how I've navigated it.
I love that. Yeah. It's important to fight that imposter syndrome because it'll sweep you up and it can get overwhelming really, really fast.
Yeah.
And especially when you have experiences like that, like someone laughing at you, that's so demoralizing. Like it can definitely be something that eats away at you if you're not careful. So what are some things that you do to kind of like take care of yourself being a woman of color in the professional workspace?
Something that took me a really long time to learn was separating work from home. I put all of my soul into everything that I do. And I realized along the way that there were these companies that had little bits of my soul in them that I had given them. And a lot of times when you're working somewhere, they just don't actually care about you as a person overall in the long scheme of things. It's just you're replaceable and it doesn't matter. And so I had to teach myself because I would get really, really sick because I would work so much that like if you're gone, they're going to replace you tomorrow. And so I had to learn how to take a step back and really separate family and home and make sure that I had those boundaries in place to take care of my health instead of taking care of the company over my health. It took a while to learn.
Love that. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Taking care of yourself. A lot of people forget to do that.
And if you could go back and like give yourself advice as you knew that, you know, through the difficult moments you faced, being a female leader, what advice would you give yourself? Just because there's lots of women, you know, I think about me coming up in my career. I'm like, you know, and so what advice would you give like the younger version of you thinking about the situations you've been in?
I feel really happy with everything that I did along the way. My main goal that I set out to achieve in my life was to just be able to go to the grocery store and buy food and not look at my bank account and not wonder.
So real.
Like, could I buy something? Probably not. That's the past me, like on food stamps and welfare and struggling to buy food to eat. There were times where we didn't have enough money for that. And so that was my only goal. And then I achieved that and was like, what do I do now? It was kind of weird. But what I would say to somebody who's trying to be on the same journey that I went on, or to myself back then, is the most important thing is to never give up. There were times that I lost jobs that I was like, oh, this was my key to being able to provide for my family in a way that I needed to. Or maybe a job went a different way that I didn't expect and it was bad or whatever else. Just staying on that course is really important, but also building connections along the way was what really opened doors for me. Because a lot of times we're told if you just work hard, then that's it. You'll make it, but it's not. That's such a small portion of it. You have to work hard to build the connections and get those references, but really it's the people in your life that are going to help you along the way. So that's what I would say is most important.
100%.
That is very sound advice. I appreciate that. I'm gonna take that in this moment. I'm writing it down now.
No, and I agree. Even in the short time that I've been working professionally, like you need people in your corner to ride for you when stuff goes down, if something's happening, or even just like a sounding board. Like you need someone to be able to advocate for you. So like I'm like, yes, I'm like seeing that happen now, and I've had a bad relationship, not the best relationship with my boss for the past couple months. And it's just now like turning to be good. And it's like the difference that has made is like night and day, and like her and just feeling like she's advocating not just for me, but like I feel like, she's going to protect me and help me has been like a world of a difference. And
And Utah's such a tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody.
We're only like 2 people removed from each other. That's what I always say. Like, especially in the Black community, we're only like 1 or 2 people removed from each other.
Yeah,
that's very true. Cool.
Love it.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Perfect. That's great. It was excellent questions. Excellent interview. Ellie, thank you so much for
thank
going
you.
on the podcast, sharing your story. It's incredible. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to share? Anything you wanted to talk about?
I think I would say that it's never too late for you to change your life. I mean, I came from extreme poverty, being a teen mom, high school dropout, no college degree. I had nothing going for me. And I said, this is not it. I'm going to change my life. And I did. And so I want everybody out there to know it's never too late for you to do that. And also just keep going. If you're in the thick of it and you're like, it's not going to happen for me, it will. You just have to be patient and just keep chugging along.
Amen to everything. I hate when people tell me it's too late or I'm too old, or that's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Yeah.
Like, Carlin Sanders was like 67 when he started KFC, or when somebody else started KFC.
There you go.
Yeah.
Never too old.
You know what I mean? Like, I just think you're never too old. And I strongly believe that.
I do too.
I love that.
Tattooed on my forehead.
Cool. Well, we're gonna jump into these recommendations.
Yeah. Right. I'm ready for my recommendation.
All right, jump in. You got it.
Sorry. I was thinking about it on my way here. All right, guys. You probably have seen this all on your timeline by now, by the time this comes out next week. I watched the documentary, the 4-part episode, Quiet on Set, on Max. It's about the child stars on Nickelodeon. Have you guys seen this?
I haven't seen it. I heard
Oh my
about
gosh,
it.
you guys haven't seen it. Okay, well, I feel like the cool person now. Guys, this documentary is so good. In the sense of it just makes you think about a lot. And so the documentary, they interview different child stars who were on comedy shows, on Nickelodeon, kids shows.
Drake and Josh.
Yeah, so they didn't necessarily interview all of those people. They interview people who were a little further back in the 90s. And then there's like 2 people who were on shows in like the early 2000s. Drake Bell is one of them. And then one of the characters who was on Zoe 101 for a good little bit. Those are probably like the biggest names who were on there, but they're still like important people who are on shows for seasons. They just necessarily didn't have a career after they were children, but they talk about basically child predators on the sets of these shows with children and things that happen to them. And it just also just like the inappropriate nature of a lot of the jokes that were written in these TV shows, and watching them back now as an adult, you're like, these are like really strong sexual innuendos that like as an adult, I get like, I'm going to watch and like, I would laugh at that. But this is shows made for kids. You are like a grown man writing jokes for children. Why are you... just watch the documentary. I don't want to spoil anything. And it like is so disturbing. Like days later, I've never been that person that like things days later just like sit with me. And there's only been like a handful of things. And this is definitely one of them. Like I keep thinking about it in my free time, like thinking about the shows, what was written, and how like no one protected these children. And like we don't even have confirmation of some of the other inappropriate behaviors. It's only assumptions of what could happen with like people like Amanda Bynes. We see these child stars who kind of turn left. and we think about what they kind of maybe had to endure that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
And Drake Bell goes into, his assault that he experienced and what, has kind of affected him. And we look at some of the things that have happened to him in recent years. And it kind of doesn't, not justify it, but helps you to you create understanding. So that was my recommendation. Some people can't, stomach some of those things and watch them, but if you can, it's just really informative. And definitely something we need to, as a public, like raise awareness to, and definitely need to look out for how young people are treated when they're making money and who is controlling them, who's looking out for their well-being, things like that. Highly recommend the documentary. It's on Max.
Quiet on Set. All right.
4 episodes. I watched it all in one night because it was just so engaging. It's like 4 hours down.
Okay. I'll check it out. That sounds good. My recommendation this week, another good one. I love music, and I've been listening to a lot of good music lately, and this album is one that I came across recently. It's called Where Have I Been by Jade Nova. It's an R&B album, but it's also I like to think of it as like it was written like a Broadway play. So like there's like acting and interludes in the album. So there's people acting, and they're like telling a story, and then like there's songs that are like a part of it. So it's like you're listening to a musical or like you're listening to a Broadway play.
I love that.
And it's all R&B. And I love it to death. It's probably my favorite album of 2024. So I highly recommend listening to Jade Nova's Where Have I Been? It just came out like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. But I really enjoyed that album. I've been listening to it nonstop. So that's my recommendation for the week. Ellie, what you got for us?
My recommendation, if you like sushi, you've got to check out Tsunami. They have a few different locations around Utah, but super good. I'm a huge like fine dining foodie, and that's one of my favorites.
Okay. Is it spelled just like regular, like Tsunami?
Yep.
Okay. We'll check it
I've
out.
been meaning to go. Like since I moved to Salt Lake, and I haven't. I go to Mint and Tapas. Have you been there?
No, I need to try
Okay,
it.
you like sushi? They're really good. I feel like I haven't been to Tsunami, which everyone recommends, but they're my favorite sushi place up here. And they have 4 locations, one in Sandy, Conwood Heights. They have a new one in Sugar House too. So pick where you live and find one. But I love Mint and Tapas. They're so good. And I feel like their fish to me felt like just like the freshest in Utah, considering we're like a landlocked state.
Yeah.
So I felt like they were pretty good. I think about them all the time. It's like I try to take people there all the time. I'm like, oh, have you been here? Oh, good. Now I get to go again. Yeah, and it's like it's pretty good, and the pricing's pretty decent for sushi. So yeah, you should try them.
I'm checking that out.
Yeah,
Right.
No, very good.
There you go. Well, cool. I think we're done. Ellie, you got anything else you want to share?
No,
okay,
cool. Oh wait, one more thing. Shout out to Rachel for her nomination and then subsequent voting and awarding. Hold on, let me pull up the title of this award. The YWCA, Eliminating Racism and Empowering Women, has awarded Rachel Weaver the Leader of Tomorrow Award. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the name of the award. Yeah.
Leader of Tomorrow. So she was voted, right?
Yes.
You were voted.
Yeah, there was like I was nominated anonymously, and then there was like a committee, and they voted, based on all these other people, and then they picked me.
That's great.
Yeah. So shout out to Rachel for doing that. Congratulations to her. And with that, we'll catch y'all next week.
Yes.
See ya.